Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Nonprofit Learning Lab for today's workshop. If you have any questions along the way for our presenters, you can type them into the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel, likely on the right-hand side of your screen. If you have any tech-related questions, you can also type them there. If you are interested in using live captions for today's workshop, you can use the link that we will send in the chat shortly. If you are interested in receiving the recordings and material from today's free webinar, you can visit our free webinars page on the Nonprofit Learning Lab website, or you can send us an email at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. And without further ado, I will now hand it over to you, Maura and Sarah.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. I am going to transition to our introduction slide. We're so excited to have you here for Writing for Impact. My name is Sarah Hogan. I am a co-founder and chief purpose officer at a public relations and design company here in Denver, Colorado called Barefoot PR. I'm going to give you a little visual so you can kind of imagine where Maura and I are today. We are at the 16th story of the high-rise just on the south edge of downtown Denver, if anyone has ever been there. We're looking at beautiful blue skies this morning and hanging out with you from our conference room. I'm Sarah, the one in the picture on the green shirt, so you can get a visual. Maura, do you want to do a quick intro for yourself?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Maura O'Leary. I am the strategy associate here at Barefoot PR. I am the one on the left in the jean dress, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you today.
Excellent. Well, Barefoot PR is kind of a unique firm in that all of our clients, for the most part, make communities better. And we are thrilled to work with the nonprofit sector to help elevate their words and design. And you can see there a few of our clients include the Aspen Community Foundation, Civic Center Conservancy. We work with a really cool organization here in Denver called the Denver Office of Nonprofit Engagement. And we work with quite a few regional partners as well. And we are so dedicated to helping our clients tell their story through words and design. And today, Maura and I consider ourselves our chief word nerds here at Barefoot. And so we're going to be spending a little bit of time with you today talking about how to elevate your writing to really nail that impact. We have about 45 minutes of content for you today, and then we'll open it up for some questions. But throughout, if you have any questions here for us, feel free to type them in the chat, and we will be monitoring them, and then we'll work them in throughout, and then again, leave some time at the end for questions. All right, Maura, let's keep rolling to our first poll. We want to get to know you as a group of people. We are going to launch our first poll here. We want to understand, as a writer, you're an expert. Option A, you could write in your sleep, which awesome. That sounds so cool. Are you a great editor in that you love reading other people's words and you really enjoy kind of getting to know what they're doing? That you're a great creative writer, meaning that, you know, your imagination might lead you down some paths. Or option 4 here, which is help, writing is not my natural form of communication, and that's okay too. But we'll take a second, launch that poll, and get to know where our audience is at today. Great. We're just waiting for those results to come in. Feel free to click away. I understand sometimes it can be super challenging to pick just one option. I know there are days where I feel like a great creative writer, and other days I feel like I'm just a really strong editor. Maura, I'm sure you feel that way too.
I feel the same.
Awesome. It looks like we have our poll result in, and we've got kind of a three-way tie here with a lot of great editors, some really phenomenal creative writers, and some others who have showed up here who are saying, writing is not my natural form of communication, make me stronger. So we'll make sure we try to address all three of you. In addition, those of you who identify as the expert who could write in your sleep, I really encourage you to help our audience here by chiming in with some of your own thoughts on our content. So let's roll back to our slides here. And I'm going to walk you through what we're going to go through today. So for the purpose of today, we're going to kind of go on a little writing journey here. We're going to start by defining these three fundamental pieces of writing. So voice, audience, and tone. Then we're going to spend a little time talking about why those three things matter in writing. Third, we're going to spend some time learning how to use them to inspire the audience that you're trying to connect with. And fourth, we're going to do a little practice and engage here and then answer some questions with everyone. So let's keep rolling through, and I'm going to turn it over to Maura for our first piece.
So before we dive into all of our learning materials today, we're going to get warmed up by having you react to a few pieces of content. So before I give this a read for you all, I just wanted to share that these were newsletter blurbs written for our client Civic Center Conservancy and distributed in their monthly newsletter. So the content for this first example is grab a good lunch, be a great neighbor. Denver's premier food truck festival is back in Civic Center Park on May 17th. Every Wednesday and Thursday throughout the summer, join us at Civic Center Eats to enjoy delicious food from your favorite local food trucks. This year, you can give back while you grab lunch by contributing to Eats for All, our initiative that makes Eats more accessible by inviting parkgoers to pay what they can for a meal of their choice. Catch you there? Okay, first example, and now we're going to roll into another poll. And tell us how this makes you feel. It might make you feel a few of these different options, but what's the one that feels the strongest to you? Excited, welcomed, informed, or a little hungry?
Amazing. We're seeing those results roll in. I don't know about you, but I had a light breakfast this morning, so I'm feeling hungry just in general. I don't know if this is just contributing to that, but whew. I might need my morning snack after we're done here.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Looks like we have 50% of you who feel informed. You have really latched onto the fact that this is back. It's happening on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 2. You also understand a little bit about, what you can get there and how you can give back. And that's awesome. I think that is definitely a piece of content that we really wanted to relay through this slide. So it's a good example.
All right, on to example 2. So for this second example, we have Civic Center Eats is back with the Eats for All initiative. Civic Center Eats, Denver's premier food truck festival, is back in Civic Center Park starting May 17th. The festival is featuring a variety of local food trucks and will take place every Wednesday and Thursday throughout the summer from 11 to 2 p.m. This year's festival will become more accessible through a new program, Eats for All, a pay-as-you-are-able initiative that expands food access for those who are unable to enjoy food due to cost being a barrier. Join us at Civic Center Eats. All right, similar piece of content, and now let us know how you feel about this one. We have some of the same kind of emotions here. We've got excited, welcomed, informed, or hopefully not dead inside.
Listen, I understand it's a Monday morning, and if you are feeling a little dead inside, I encourage you to step away, grab another cup of coffee, maybe a hot tea, start to bring that life back to you a little bit. Get it going. Watching these results roll in. All right, it looks like we are feeling informed again and maybe slightly more welcomed this time. Not so excited, which I understand. This one did not hit on some of those vibes. And a few of us are feeling dead inside. So listen, we're all welcome here. That challenge is accepted. We're going to try to wake you up a little bit more with our content today.
All right. So those feelings, those different emotions, you likely landed on those because of these 3 essential components that go into writing a really stellar piece of content: voice, audience, and tone. So what we're going to be talking about today is how you can get to know how to use these tools in all of your writing to engage with your audience, make an impact on the people that you want to reach most, and make people feel something. So let's keep going here.
As our goal as writers is always to get a reaction from people. I was listening to a great podcast over the weekend where I was listening to a writer talk about their own writing and said that their goal is to make people angry, happy, feel inspired, anything as long as they're having an emotion. And that's kind of what we're here to do.
Yeah. So let's start with kind of defining these three fundamental components to great writing. So voice, what is it? Whenever you're writing a piece of content for the organizations you work for or a client you're working with, a great place to start is by considering the voice. So this is the foundational message that every organization has. It's kind of communicating their position in the community. It's really unique. It's specific to the organization you're working for. And we like to think of it as a dictionary of terms, ideas, and concepts, phrases that communicate an organization's position in the community, or just the value they bring to the community. A great example that I like to think of is my favorite author, Dolly Alderton. She's a novelist and an advice columnist in the UK. She writes for the Sunday Times. And every time I read a piece of writing from her, really in whatever context, her perspective is so clear. It's almost like we're sitting together gossiping at a cafe. I can hear her voice so clearly in my head. She's using very similar phrases frequently. She's very self-aware. She's a bit self-deprecating, has this very British sensibility. And I think her voice is just so clear to me. It's a great example I like to pull from.
Well, it gives us all some homework to look up Dolly.
Please do.
And maybe get some good advice along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. Well, the next tool we have in our toolbox is this idea of audience. And one of my favorite things to answer when we are meeting with clients for the first time, talking with organizations, and we talk to them to say, who is it that you're trying to reach? And frequently people will say, well, donors and volunteers and, board members and influencers and really everyone. And you know what? Unfortunately, my response is always that everyone can't be an audience. And what we can do is find an audience and speak to each one of those audiences in a new and different way. But we have to learn to be really specific about what we're trying to do with our audience and what we're trying to communicate with them. A couple of things to keep in mind is as you're defining audience for a specific piece of content, you really have to think about the benefit that you're providing to them, not just kind of the features. So for example, with the food truck in Civic Center Eats, we're trying to display this benefit of coming together as a community, that it's fun, it's an enjoyable way to be there, and also you can get food even if you maybe don't have the free space to be able to pay for it that day. So that was a benefit, not just the features of like outdoor, that sort of thing. So it's a place to relax. All of that information is really, really great, and it's a way to kind of influence the way we apply our voice to reach that specific audience. Another example I like to pull from is years ago, I was going through the struggle of trying to figure out a new car. And, I'm a mom and a young mom, and I had seen the Toyota Venza, which, I had my heart set on it. And then sometime after I had first seen it, they started advertising to an audience that wasn't me. It was all of their commercials showed people who were in retirement or nearing retirement, going on these extra lifestyle journeys, doing this crossover, having a little space. And I kept questioning, like, that's not who I am. Could this car finally be for me? And frankly, it took me a long time to realize that like the marketing didn't have to hit on me in order to do that. And it probably delayed my decision making by 3 or 4 years in doing that. So they maybe had that audience, but we're missing me entirely as an audience of someone who is interested in kind of that crossover vehicle space. So just an example, not quite from the nonprofit sector, of something to kind of keep in mind that as we're reaching an audience, sometimes we can actually turn away another audience or delay their choice. So we want to be very specific about that.
So how we can speak more clearly to that audience would be tone. And this is getting a little bit more nuanced. So the tone is the way that you use the voice to speak to an intended audience, being mindful of the context and just the environment you are speaking to that audience within. The tone is the way that we use things like sentence structure, reading level, punctuation, and word choice to more effectively meet an audience where they are. I like to kind of think of it as like the personality of the voice or the attitude of a voice. And the ones that we often come back to for our writing with nonprofits are things like friendly, engaging, formal, serious, urgent. those are the tones that we often draw from frequently. Someone who has a real mastery of tone is Barack Obama, and he's obviously known for his public speaking skills, and he's always coming with the same voice. He has his perspective, and that's very clear, but depending on the context that he's speaking within, the audience that he's speaking to, he often changes his pacing. He might speak at a different pitch. Maybe he's being a little bit more declarative, lingering on specific words, or just looking and moving a certain way. And that nuance that he adds to his voice is the tone that he's using to more effectively engage with the people that he wants to speak with.
So we've kind of gone through these three big tools, voice, tone, and audience, that are so important to kind of getting us teed up to go through here. Feel free, if you have questions about that, to type them into the chat, and we will happily try to get that. We're going to move into our next poll. So our next poll is just to kind of like figure out, again, dig a little deeper, where are you at as an audience? You know, you know your organization's voice, tone, and audience. You feel really good about that. B, you don't know, but it would be so easy to figure out by just kind of like digging in, spending a little time. Or 3, whoa, this is going to take me a minute. Feel free to register in the poll, and we'll try to figure out where our audience is at today. Awesome, seeing those numbers roll in. Fantastic. Love seeing those votes register. Really cool. We'll give it one more second. Okay, well, this is such great news. I love that as an audience, we're feeling 63% equipped to know that voice, tone, and audience, which is amazing. That means that we have to spend a little less time kind of digging in on where to find it. But we also have a group of people who say, I don't know, I can't quickly identify it, but it would be super easy to figure out. So that's great to know. And for those of you who are like, wow, this is going to take a minute, hopefully our next section will help you figure out where to go for that. We're going to do a little bit of a refresher here on kind of where to go for why they matter and where we're going next here.
All right.
Sorry, we're having one slide little hiccup. Give us a second. Well, our next section is really going to be about why voice, tone, and audience matter. I'm going to keep rolling through while Maura is working through on our slides to make sure we can get there. So let's start here. Why in the world are using voice, tone, and audience important? Well, we like to say that there are 3 reasons why those pieces are so important. We need them for clarity, we need them for consistency, and we need them for connection. Those 3 pieces really help us to deliver a message that an audience can react to and take action with. When we talk about clarity, that is, can I find the information that I need to get going? Great, our slides were able to catch up. Can we find the information that we need to know when something is happening, to know what someone wants me to do with that I understand, you know, for nonprofits, the impact of my donation. So is there that kind of who, what, where, when, why there for me? And is it showing up repeatedly within content? Maura, would you like to talk about consistency?
Absolutely. So consistency in voice, tone, and audience helps to build trust with an audience. We worked with a nonprofit and we were helping them create a communications plan and build some messaging. And what we'd heard from a lot of the organizations that they were partnered with was that they were struggling to build, just to trust the content coming out that they were receiving from an organization, because the voice was unclear, the tone wasn't being tailored to the specific audiences. And so it was really important for us in that plan to just reiterate the importance of speaking to people clearly in the voice, that establishing that really clear voice and finding the audiences that they want to connect with.
I think sometimes a challenge we face as nonprofit communicators is that when something doesn't work once, or it may not work for one person, there's this habit of like jumping around and trying new things. And while I'm always a huge fan of experimentation, I actually try to reinforce with clients, let's give it a shot. Maybe we need to take that tone and really deliver it over the course of 3 to 6 months to see if it's resonating. It could be that it was new, or it could be that we just needed to hone in on what we were saying, not just how we were saying that. So that consistency piece is really important.
Yeah, and finally, the connection. This is what really moves us the most, but using these three as kind of the framework and the foundation to creating great content just makes people feel things. It empowers people to act. Being very consistent in the usage of these three fundamentals in your writing can connect with new audiences, build donor bases, empower community members to connect to resources that are available to them in a way that makes the most sense for them. So these three fundamentals are just a better way of connecting with people that you want to connect with. So we really liked this quote as a way to describe that this just doesn't happen overnight. Pat McMillan, who is a CEO and an expert on teams, said excellent communication doesn't just happen naturally. It's a product of process, skill, climate, relationship, and hard work. And the next few slides are going to dig a little bit more into what the process and the hard work of using these fundamentals in your writing looks like.
Amazing. Rolling through here now, how can we use voice, tone, and audience and really start to command? So for those of you who said, gosh, I'm not feeling like an expert writer, let's really focus in together. And for those of you who are writing all the time, I always like to look back at these to maybe refresh my skill set or feel a little more inspired moving through.
Yeah. So let's pretend we're looking at a blank screen, we're at a blank piece of paper, we're ready to start a piece of content, and this is where we're going to start. We're going to find the voice. So some organizations that you might work with might have this in a messaging platform, a brand guide. If that's not available to you, the mission and vision is a great place to go to just kind of get grounded in an organization's purpose and intent in the community. And it's really just combing through those pieces of content to find the phrases, terms, concepts that an organization really leans back to and calls back upon to talk about their purpose in the community. If the messaging or brand guide or things like values aren't super clear, a great way to go is to just dig through the website, go on any blogs, social media, anything that like leadership has created and distributed in the form of op-eds, or annual reports are a great place. Just spend some time familiarizing yourself with all of the great content that your organization has to offer.
I'm going to chime in here because, I think sometimes we're working as a staff of one or maybe two in a nonprofit, and it can just be so overwhelming to find that quiet time to do that. For those of you who have the tool like a marketing or a communications committee, I think this is actually a great challenge for them. So challenge them to say, listen, I want to go on a project over the course of the next month or two. If you could all spend some time looking at, provide them a handful of samples, the website, whatever, and ask them to come back with, 5 feelings or words or tone they feel repeated again. Rejoin as a committee, maybe go through a little whiteboard exercise to see if there's anything that's been repeated. I think that can be a great way to kind of nail that down with some people who may have the time and capacity and represent the audience you're trying to reach, and say, okay, they've helped me identify, those things for me, my voice.
That's a great idea. An example that we used recently, we were working with this organization called the Better Foundation, who invests in the potential of Coloradans, the future of Colorado through scholarships and grants and a variety of other leadership-based activities. We were helping them build a new website. And when we were starting to create their website content, they provided us this really great comprehensive brand book that had pages and pages of things like the brand positioning, the values, brand personality, that was easy for us to just go back to when maybe we hadn't worked on that content for a few days and we needed to just immerse ourselves back in the Betcher Foundation personality and style. One of the things that I really liked to use was the brand positioning. So every time I sat down, I really liked that it was, I'm one of the game changers who propels Colorado forward. And this was a great kind of value statement that I used to frame and just guide all of the content that we wrote for that website. So I was writing like I was a change maker too, and all of that content was kind of inspired by the values, the personality, and all the things that was in this really comprehensive brand book.
You know, I think one of the challenges that can be so hard as a writer is that we all have our own voices, and we're trying to embody the voice of this organization. One exercise that I use is to frequently do some writing and then read it out loud. And if I can hear myself talking like the CEO in my writing when I read it out loud, then I know I've nailed it. But that kind of voice out loud exercise can be super helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right.
So we're going to roll through here to getting to know our audience a little bit. We want to learn a little bit more. Sorry about that. We're having a little slide issue here. We want to get to know our audience a little bit better. We want to spend some time nailing down who are these people. You know, when I said earlier that everyone is not an audience, we need to figure out how we want to narrow that group down. We want to learn about their motivators. So here are a few of the things that I like to roll through just to kind of help me wrap my head around these personalities that I might be imagining. So things like demographics. Often a nonprofit will have some demographic information on donors or maybe on people you serve. So really spending some time with those numbers and that data. Then I want to kind of look at kind of the knowledge that I have about that audience. Are there misconceptions about the people that we serve that I want to make sure are there, that I'm appropriately typing? So for example, if I am a housing organization, one of those misconceptions could be that it's someone who isn't interested in working. And perhaps I want to make sure that I want to demonstrate how hard indeed those people are working to hold on to housing, and that maybe there's just this gap between wages we can earn and the cost of housing. And so I'm going to want to position that hardworking behavior for people. I want to understand their preferred platform. So Maura and I love this tool of hosting community conversations, which are really a more informal focus group where we'll often reach out to people who represent the audience we're trying to reach and ask them questions about their perception of the organization, how they describe it to a friend, what has been helpful. Another thing we like to ask them is, how do you like to be reached? We were working with a really interesting organization that helped with educating and skilling up childcare workers who did in-home childcare, which was an essential service. And we found out that that group of people had been communicated with via email. And frankly, most of them were like, I don't have time to sit at my email and go through that. What I would prefer is a text message that says, sign up here because it's quick, it's easy to do. And so we were able to advise the organization that actually let's invest less time in email and more time in text messaging. We also want to look at their behaviors or the actions we want this audience to take. So are we really interested in people signing up for training, or are we really interested in people donating? And we want to make sure that call to action that we're loading for each group is keyed up every time, front and center, and we can't be afraid to put that at the top of the email. Then we understand their pain points. So I just mentioned with these childcare workers, the pain point was like not having a lot of time to sit down at a computer and read email. And so we were able to kind of get over that hurdle by investing in text messaging. For a donor, perhaps it's something like, you know, I feel like you're just asking me for money all the time, not asking me, you know, my opinion or why I invest. And so maybe we need to build in some messaging or some communication that does that. And then we want to understand the context. What is it with how they're looking at the world, you know, how they're filling in their own colors, which crayons are they pulling out of their box to do that? So those are a few ways that we like to cull that down. Another thing that I like to do, kind of a pro tip, is to think about someone that I know who might fit my audience. So I have a pretty vast network of friends and family members, really trying to spend time. And as I am building my communication, I will often think, you know, how would my friend Andy understand what I am writing? Because Andy fits this audience. And it's just a helpful tool that I like to make it a little more real, so I'm not just rushing through putting words down on paper.
Okay. So now we've got the audience kind of figured out. We know their motivators, their pain points, and we're going to go to move on to the tone. So similarly to when we're learning about the audience, a great place to start when you're choosing your tone is to just think about the context that an audience member, community member could be reading your content in. What's going on in the world, what's going on in their community, what would potentially be going on in their lives, if they're picking up their phone, scrolling through their email, reading the content that you've distributed. Because that'll influence, maybe you have some more time to be a little friendly, a little flowery in your writing, or maybe there's a little bit more urgency. Someone wants to get connected to resources immediately, and that means that your writing should be a little bit more serious, urgent, and help connect them with things they need as quickly as possible. Another good idea is to consider the best practices and limitations of the platform you're reaching them through. Things like social media will be a little bit more informal than something like an annual report, or maybe an email newsletter, a letter from an executive director. Sometimes you have different word counts and things that you have to attune to when you're working on different platforms. Finally, I like to pick a few adjectives, kind of like those words to guide the framework to inspire the content that you're creating. And some that we used when we did the Venture Foundation website, that one that we had called upon a little earlier, was things like inquisitive, visionary, exceptional, collaborative, and it was supported by some further sub-adjectives that helped us just look through everything we did, read everything aloud, and call back to those words to make sure that we had the tone right and we were communicating with the audiences in the way that we knew was most effective.
Awesome. Well, let's take a pause here. We're coming up on a half hour. For those of you who have a little more time to spend with us, we'd love to. We've gone through, we've defined our voice, tone, and audience. We've talked about why they're important. And we've even talked, for those of you who have no idea where to begin, on maybe some tools and ways that you can get to know them a little bit better. Let's do a quick check-in. We want to understand what tone is most useful for your organization's primary audience. So this one both asks you to think about who is the primary audience and how are you going to talk to them. So we have a few options here. We have informative, we have inspiring, commanding, friendly, and expert. Those are all tones that we tend to use pretty often. So we'll kind of let that poll launch and see kind of where we're at here. Love watching these roll in. Amazing. As a group of nonprofits, I am sure we'll have a lot of commonality here. Oh, yeah. And maybe be able to understand a few ways that we can kind of differentiate in the future. Oh, yeah. It'd be amazing. Looks like we've got, okay, so it looks like as a group, 51% of us are relying on that inspiring narrative to be able to kind of lean in and explain what we're doing. And that is no surprise to me. I think as nonprofits, we're often trying to inspire hope in future outcomes, that as a people, we can do something really much bigger than ourselves. It also looks like informative, which makes sense to me, is second there with 34%. And then we have friendly and expert kind of trailing under that 10% mark, and commanding being a little an unused option. I'm going to talk a little bit about commanding. If any of you are organizations that engage in advocacy, that actually is a tone that I think can be really, really useful. We work with an organization that does a lot of advocacy in and around Washington, D.C., and I always call it my soapbox moment when we're writing for them. I'm standing up, I'm really trying to command attention and inspire those congressional actors to action. So that is one note about when advocacy can be helpful. Friendly, I think sometimes can be really helpful when we're talking about events or when we're trying to invite a community in. And expert can be really helpful when we're trying to communicate maybe with media or trying to grab the attention of a policymaker to say, like, listen, I just know these facts and stats in a way that can be super helpful. You can rely on me. So I love running through those voices and tones.
All right.
Excellent. We are going to roll down into some practice here. Working on getting our screen functioning again.
Sorry.
No worries. Any questions? I know we've had a lot of polls here. We're trying to make sure that this is fun and engaging for you, but I would love it if anyone has a question about voice, tone, or audience, if you wanted to type that in now so we can start collecting those. Incredible. All right. Let's roll into our practice here. Maura?
All right. So, sorry about this, everybody.
For some reason, the computer is just giving us
not like
time here.
The preview option. Okay, here we go. So there we go. All right. So here is the scenario that we're going to introduce for you all today. We're going to use the 3 fundamentals that we've learned more about and apply it to this real life scenario. So Civic Center Conservancy, a client that we've talked about a little bit earlier today, and one of the clients that we work for, wants you to help them get the word out about their summer food truck festival, Civic Center Eats. Food trucks take over Civic Center Park in the heart of downtown every Wednesday and Thursday, and there's a charitable component to the festival that allows people to buy a meal for those who cannot afford to eat there. So your task is to pick a voice, tone, and audience, and write an engaging headline that highlights the opening of the Summer Food Truck Festival and the new Eats for All Donate a Meal program.
So we understand that we haven't given you all the resources here in order to understand them. So we're going to just allow you to use your imagination. The idea here is just to try to be specific and get a little practice in along the way. So, thinking about maybe what connects with you with food trucks, if you've been a person who's enjoyed with them, or perhaps as a nonprofit professional, maybe you're really interested in this component that allows people to buy a meal for those who cannot afford to eat there. If anyone is willing, please feel free to paste your headline into the chat and we would share them. I think the best way to learn is sometimes to learn from one another. So if you have any willing participants, I'd love to see some of those roll in. And we also gave a few examples here too. So our first option, kind of hitting on this idea of the charitable component, maybe that inspirational, inspired to drive people to community action, is Feel Good Food Truck Festival at Civic Center Park. So that's our headline. We're leaning into that feel good piece there. Our second one is Eat Lunch and Do Good, a little more direct. You can even hear it in my voice change. Eat lunch and do good at Civic Center Eats. So, we're catching people who might be feeling a little hungry and also have that second component there. And then our third headline that we've kind of been experimenting with here is Eat in Civic Center Park every Wednesday and Thursday this summer, which is, again, just informative. Like, hey, you know what? I know the dates from that headline. I know where to go, and I can get the job done.
I'm hungry, it's lunch.
I'm hungry, it's lunch, we're going. Well, it looks like we're feeling a little shy here. We're always happy to take some of those examples further, but honestly, we just wanted to show you the idea of how to practice this, maybe pull a little bit there from your own experience and be able to roll this in. All right.
Sorry to interrupt. We do have quite a few responses that have been coming in.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I am not able to see those actually here, so thank you for putting them in there. Oh my gosh, there they are.
I'm just going to read them off. Someone shared very simply Civic Center Eats with an exclamation point. Someone else shared buy a meal, donate a meal to someone in need. Someone shared donate a meal in downtown Denver. People have also shared bring the heat with Eats.
Oh, love it.
There's so many, so I'm just going to read them off, but
yes,
enjoy.
I can see them too. I'm happy to jump in as well.
Okay, yep. I do want to make sure that you're able to see the question.
Yes. I found my section. Thank you. It looks like the pay as you go at Civic Center food trucks. I love that idea. Hungry for change. Looks like we're attending. Thank you guys so much for participating. My apologies that we did not see those. right away. I appreciate all these different tones here. We'll do that. So I'm going to do a quick transition here to our next slide. So Maura and I have been really just thrilled to share the last 40 minutes with you and to run through some of this content. We understand that this was quick and we have not been able to dive into everything. And we also understand that as a nonprofit, sometimes what you need is someone to just brainstorm with. We are always happy to do a 30-minute consult with you for free. Just as part of the nonprofit community, this is sort of our service. You can see our emails there. It's Sarah at Barefoot PR or Maura at Barefoot PR. And if for some reason you forget our names, just go to the website and there's an option to schedule that consult. But we would be happy to just chat through your questions with you for 30 minutes, just open up that community for you. We also are happy to share the slides with you. And if you're looking for samples or resources in a way that we weren't able to share today, we are happy to do that too. So feel free to reach out. And again, if you just want to make friends with us, we're pretty easy to find on
Great friends. Yeah.
And if you're ever visiting Denver, we love giving recommendations for where to eat and where to go, including at Civic Center Park if you're here during the summer. So I'm going to now roll through a handful of questions. Feel free to add a few more as we go. It looks like we have some questions about will they be sent out via email? You want to use some of this language in your writing? Yes, I believe the slides will be accessible. And if you need them quicker than this recording or comes out, feel free to just hit us up with an email there, Whitney. And we have another question here that says, can you write to different audiences on the same platform? Or how do you feel about that?
Ooh, absolutely. I think social media is a great example of that. We have a few organizations that we work with where we use the page both to speak to donors and to participants. I think a great way to do that is to maybe if a lot of your participants speak a different language, kind of pair your content with a different language that maybe the majority of your participants speak with. But I think, yeah, just using really catchy, maybe if some people need to access resources more urgently, you can make the content much shorter. Maybe if you're writing on Facebook, just make a few sentences versus maybe if you want to highlight a program or spotlight those exact resources that you're hoping people will connect with, you can kind of go into a little bit more depth, spend some more time talking about the feeling, the experience that participants have. And yeah, just again, like the punctuation, the sentence structure, reading level is a great way to adjust those tones and just use your voice to speak with people that you want to speak with.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have kind of a couple of shared questions here. Do you have to have a lead tone? For example, can I be informative or friendly? And then another one that's like, do I just have to have one tone or can I change my tone throughout?
I think the tone, you can definitely have a lead tone, but it can also be a little bit more nuanced. I think when we were working with the Betcher Foundation, one of the big like lead tone was that inquisitive. So curious, innovative. I think those, maybe pick a few of those really strong ones that your organization wants to express the most clearly, and then pair those with a little bit of nuance. I think tone you can play around with. It's like one of the most fun parts of creating content for your organization. So it would be good to have a few of those leading ones that guide every piece of content you do, and then maybe support that with some sub-tones that you can.
Another thing I like to experiment with tone is thinking about who is the piece coming from. So as writers, we're often not writing just from ourselves. So I may have a very distinct tone for our CEO or executive director that might be more serious or expert. And then as I'm engaging from the organization, maybe with volunteers, that feels a little more friendly. It's not quite as serious or expert. And so you can kind of pair a little bit there. I think the one thing that we like to remind people as we're mixing and matching is just like with putting on patterns, you know, you may not want to put on 6 patterns in your outfit. You might just want to pick 2 and go with that at a time. Otherwise it can get a little busy. And I think that is a good reminder, you know, maybe stick with, you know, tiny dots and big stripes, but don't add in flowers and plaid at the same time with your tone.
That's a great point.
All right, I'm looking here if there's any more questions coming in. We would love to see that. Is it fine to change wording if you work with many counties depending on the event? Actually, I think that's a great question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, that speaks really to the audience. If you're working with different counties, you're working with different populations, maybe the demographics look a little bit different. So I think it's totally appropriate to speak to them in maybe the words or the tone, the phrases that you think maybe that population might resonate with a little bit more than others.
Amazing. Yes, I love that. We're happy to kind of continue to monitor a few questions here. Gosh, Mark, are there any things that come to mind to you that like are commonly asked questions that you think our clients come up with?
I think that often it's a matter of people just feeling a little lost when it comes to voice. When we work with a lot of nonprofits, they're so familiar with the work that they do and all the services that they provide, but they might not be the most familiar with communicating those services in a way that speaks to a broader audience. So I think just kind of finding those few phrases, those few ideas that capture your value in the community and using those frequently in your content is a great way to just make your voice like sing really loudly to the audiences that you want to reach.
Yeah. You know, one thing that comes up for me, and then we'll close this out, is that often I'll talk to people who are responsible for writing a lot of content, and even our own team, and you just get kind of exhausted with the same voice over and over. And it's hard because sometimes we're behind a screen, we're not necessarily in front of people really seeing how that content affects them. And my challenge to you as a communicator is to remind yourself maybe once a quarter to get out in front of that audience and to really see how your words have impacted them. So maybe you're writing a script for an event. Maybe you want to do a little informal focus group with some people and say, like, can you just tell me how this email resonated with you, or the story that we connected about someone that we've, helped through our programming. But just refresh yourself by getting out in front of the audience that you're connecting with and find kind of that rejuvenated energy to keep writing and stick to that voice and tone because it's working. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Well, we're here if you need us, and I'm going to turn it back to the Nonprofit Learning Lab folks to kind of close us out here today.
Great, thank you. This workshop has officially come to a close. If you are interested in receiving the recordings and materials from today's free webinar, you can visit our free webinars page on the Nonprofit Learning Lab website. You can also send us an email at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. Thank you so much for participating. And again, thank you, Maura and Sarah, for educating our community.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.